Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is the author of the One Page Wealth Compass, Mr. David Nassief. How you doing today, David?
Great, Ryan. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Hey, I'm kind of interested in your story. It's pretty interesting to me.
That's great. Looking forward
So,
to
the,
talking about it.
the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is David Nassief?
Sure. I'm from Ohio, originally in a small town, and I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona now. I have a wife and a son, and I think I am the world's, this is self-proclaimed, I want you to know, the world's foremost authority on how to do everything wrong when it comes to investing and personal finance. For 40 years, I messed up royally. I made good money, but in terms of investing, I did terrible. So I could probably write another book on what not to do and how to make every mistake in the book, because I definitely made every mistake in the book.
Well, that's the first step is admitting that you made the mistake so you can change it,
Oh,
right?
yeah, exactly.
You were fired when you were 63 years old. Can you tell us about that?
Oh my gosh, that is a day I would not wish on anybody. After 18 years with the same company, I got fired, unexpected. I did the math, and if we drained all of our savings and all of our retirement, we would have been broke by 65. At that point, I'm thinking, who is going to hire me at my age? But here's the worst thing, Ryan. It was driving home. All I could think about is how am I going to tell Mary, my wife? We'd been married for 30 years. She did not deserve the mess I just threw our life into. I truly felt like the biggest loser. So, anyways, after 2 months of dead end job searching, I decided to take a risk. And I went to work as an independent sales agent on straight commission, no salary, no safety net. Those first months were brutal. Cold calls, constant rejection, rookie mistakes. I mean, I got more no's than I could ever count. It's crazy. But I found something out, Ryan, as I kept getting the no's and kept getting rejected. That rejection helped me get the resistance I needed to build some mental muscles. Because after 10 months of grinding, I achieved something that I thought was pretty amazing. I was suddenly making more money than my good paying corporate salary. And for a brief moment, it was very brief, I says, we made it. But then I realized something. We'd saved almost nothing. And making money wasn't enough. I had to learn how to invest, but I didn't have time because my runway was so short at 60. I didn't have time to waste with a bunch of theories on investments and all these people trying to, do whatever to get you to buy their thing or whatever. So I decided to dig in myself. I read 21 books, 13 podcasts on finance. I listened to consistently, countless blogs and articles. Finally, I developed what I call a one-page wealth compass with a set it and forget it approach. 6 years later, at 69, I achieved what I thought was impossible. From terrified of being broke to a seven-figure portfolio and real financial freedom. From all that, Ryan, I learned one thing. It is never too late to rewrite your story. Because if I can pull it off starting as late as 63, anybody can with the right direction.
Yeah, that's amazing. What was your mindset like? You said it was pretty bad going home thinking you were a loser, but what was your mindset like them 2 months looking for your job, just being fired, like having to just kind of scrape by?
It was, I guess I can tell you by this quick story. My wife asked me one day, this is like a month into it, I was getting nowhere, whatever. And she says, honey, I have to go, I want to go to the store. There's a big sale and I want to get it, to conserve money. I want to get the good sale. Can you come with me and help it out? Well, I had nothing else to do. So I said, sure, I'm glad to go. So we go to the store, Ryan, and I tell you, it was full of mothers with their little kids crying in the carts or playing around or whatever. I felt like I was the only man in the whole store. I'm sure there was a few other men in there, but it was the middle of the day on a Wednesday, and I tell you, I was waiting at the end of the checkout counter for my wife who was checking out. And I felt like I had a sign on me saying, biggest loser. I felt like everybody in the store must have been, what the heck is this guy doing in the store? I should have been out there working, I says, earning a living, providing for my family. And my self-esteem, my feeling of helplessness was at an all-time, helpless was all-time high. Esteem was at an all-time low. And I just felt trapped and I didn't know what to do. And I told my wife about that much time later. I didn't want her to worry her, but man, talk about hitting rock bottom. That was such a low point for me.
Yeah. How were you able to build that mindset back up by just and realize, hey man, I just got to go for this?
Well, when I saw, here's the thing, I was interviewing for corporate jobs, which 18 years in a corporate world, but my heart wasn't in it. I can't go back to the corporate life. It's just not me. I don't want to do it. But I kept forced myself after a month or so of forcing myself. I says, come on, David, this is not going to work. You got to do something different. And so when I decided to go on my own as an independent agent, which is basically starting your own company, I had scar tissue from that because twice in my past, I had tried my own business and failed at both of them. So now here you got me, failed, getting fired after 18 years, and now going back to something that I failed at twice. I mean, not once, twice. And so I wasn't super confident, but I says, I've got to do something. I can't sit home and just self-destruct here, or just, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to do whatever I can for my family, for me. I kind of feel it's a sacred obligation for me to provide for my family. I'm not going to just sit back and if I go down, I'm going to go down fighting, at least I thought. And
yeah.
So I kept fighting and I kept fighting and I kept fighting until all of a sudden I started seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, a very faint light, but it was a very little light. It gave me hope, and I just kept going and going. And it just didn't stop. It was
awesome.
Yeah.
What was the difference this time around from the other two failures, do you think?
That's a good question. Okay. My other two failures, I actually learned a lot from them. One thing I found out is my specialty or my strength is selling intangible products, not tangible ones you can touch and feel, the intangible things, okay? And if I really believe in it, now I have to believe in it. And I didn't know that before, and that's one of the reasons for my failure. Another one was going into debt. I was in huge debt for my failures. I said, I ain't going into debt this time. This is not going to, no debt at all, and just things like that. I went back, I kept a journal since I was 25. So I went back and I looked at what were my mistakes again, and what did I say I would never do again? And I refreshed my memory and I said, okay, going forward, at least I know what to avoid. And that was a big thing. That really was, because there was like 5 things on my list that I wasn't going to do. And, and I didn't. And I think that helped a lot because that gave me hope when I was in the middle of the trenches, really fighting. I said to myself, well, at least I'm not messing up like I did before with that other deal. So I had some hope, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, failure is the best teacher at times if you learn from it and admit where you went wrong.
Yeah, if you learn from it. I totally agree with you. If you learn from it, yeah.
So what's this one-page wealth compass that changed everything?
Well, here's the deal about that. I'm a pretty simple person. I don't like complicated things. Give me a 50-page financial report and forget that. I'm not reading that deal. And so when I was reading, but I was desperate. I had to understand investments and finances, and I messed up for 40 years. I couldn't keep doing that. So I truly did dig into the research, and I dug in deep. And I was listening to podcasts all the time. I mean, when I was driving to clients' offices, when I was working out, whatever I was doing, I was listening to them. I kept feeding my mind with this stuff. And I had all these great ideas, and I was putting them on a paper. And I said, I got to get this down on one single sheet of paper. Let me ask you something, Ryan. Have you ever read a book and it was a really good book and there was a good couple tips in there? You says, man, I'm going to use those things. That could be life-changing for me. And then a year or two later, you run across that same tip and you go, oh yeah, I was going to but I forgot, well, that's me. I did that for 40 years. I said, I can't do that this time. I can't. So when I got a really good golden nugget of an idea, I put it on my one piece of paper that I was doing. And I kept distilling that and kept refining it until and what I did is every week on Fridays, I would look at it and I would take 2 minutes and review all those golden nuggets. And guess what? I stopped get off track. I didn't get off in the shiny object and get distracted. I stayed focused on boring, unsexy, proven principles that work. And man, did they work for me. They worked like nothing I'd ever experienced in the 40 years before that. But it was because I kept it simple. I kept it on one piece of paper and I reviewed it once a week for just 2 minutes. And that really made a huge difference for me.
Yeah. I've listened to a guy, I don't know if you ever heard of John Maxwell.
Yes, of course I have.
So he instills in everybody, he's like, when you're reading or either listen to something, he goes, learn a little bit, then do a little bit.
Yeah.
So you kind of can use everything you just learned. And it'll stick with you a little bit better.
Yep. I tell you what inspired, if I could, just briefly,
Yeah.
what inspired the compass. There was an experiment done by the Max Planck Institute. And what they did is they took people and put them in the center of a dense German forest, and they told them to walk in a straight line to the edge. Now, these were confident and capable people, but here's what happened. When the clouds covered the sun and they kind of could no longer watch the sun, the GPS tracking showed they were gradually starting to walk in circular motions. Some of them were ending up right back where they began, and yet every single one of those people was absolutely convinced they were walking in a perfectly straight line. Ryan, that was me for 40 years. I was working hard, making what I thought was good financial decisions, but ultimately just ending up back in circles. And that's when I said to myself, I can't do that anymore. And that's when I said, I'm going to do this compass. It's not like a normal compass. It's going to be a one-page compass on a piece of paper, but it's going to keep me on track. And right away, before I was even finished with it, it saved me $250,000. I feel like I can explain that real quick. Basically, I was 64. Okay, one year later, I was about 6 months later, and I was super desperate. Now I was making good money. That's changed. That's a really relief. But I still didn't know how to invest anything. Okay, and so I met with a fiduciary advisor who I was referred to, and she recommended something she said was amazing, called a LIRP, a life insurance retirement plan, tax-free income, long-term care, life insurance, a whole package. When she mentioned some members of Congress invested in it, I was impressed. I thought, well, maybe there's something to this, okay? And then she said, if you invest in it, David, I will waive my quarterly fees. Now, one of the tools in my unfinished, at this point, one-page compass was called Follow the Money. And it tells me to understand how people are getting paid that are giving me advice regarding money. And so I went home, I did some research, and I found out these products pay salesmen and advisors huge commissions. They have sky-high fees and very poor returns. This is the exact opposite of what I told her I needed. I had very short right away. I needed steady, stable growth. What that compass did is expose to me that she was about to make a fortune, and I'd be back to walking in financial circles again. So what I did is I got my compass, I got it finished, and basically it got me in the right investments. It helped me avoid getting ripped off from all these other distractions that people want to invest, help you with. And then it got me to accelerate my path of financial freedom. What it did, it protected my money so I could use it to build my wealth and not somebody else's wealth. And I believe now, if you don't have a plan of your own, you are part of someone else's plan. And for 40 years, I was part of someone else's plan. And look where it got me. Absolutely nowhere after 40 years.
Man, that is crazy to think that there's people out there just trying to take advantage of you and put you into something that's not going to make any money. That there's people like that out there.
Oh, yeah. It would have made her a lot of money, but it wouldn't have made me. Yeah.
Especially because she's supposed to be there to help you. That's her job description,
Exactly. And that's why a big part of my compass, a segment of it is about how not to get ripped off, how to avoid very subtle things. There's so much subtlety out there, Ryan, that they just want to pull you in this direction. Warren Buffett calls them helpers, and everybody wants a little piece of your money, and they want to help you, but they want a piece of your money. Before you know it, you have nothing left, and all the helpers are rich, and you're still doing nothing.
Yeah. How were you able to double your portfolio 3 times in 6 years?
That is a great question. First, let me tell you what I wasn't doing. I wasn't day trading, chasing crypto, or trying to time the market. I was actually doing the opposite of that. Something so boring it'd put you to sleep. What I found is a simple investment approach. And the crazy thing about it is when the market was down, I was thrilled. When other people were panicking and selling, I was buying more shares at discount prices. My only regret was the market wasn't down more during that 6-year period. But here's the thing about it. It wasn't so much the returns or only about the returns. It was also about the math. And there's a thing called the rule of 72. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with it, but what it basically says is, if you are getting, say, a 10% return on your money will double every 7.2 years, or roughly every 84 months. My first double occurred in 30 months. My second one, 13 months. My third one, 29 months, for an average of 24 months, way less than half the expected time. And the thing about it is it enabled me to avoid the trap that so many people are caught in of buying high and selling low, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do. Okay, but so many people they get panicky and they don't know what to do, and so they get in either really risky stuff, which goes bad, or they get so conservative that they can't even keep up with inflation. I found an approach of I was able to double my speed of the growth of my portfolio with half the risk compared to how so many people are doing it. And it's really simple. If you want, I can just give you a super brief version. It's I only invest in two things. I don't have a zillion stock. I never invest in an individual stock. That's too risky for me. I couldn't take that risk in my 60s. I have two ETFs, okay? And these are like mutual funds, okay? They're index funds, which means I own every publicly traded share in the United States on every stock. So there's not one I don't own. That's one of my funds, okay? The other fund, I own every publicly traded stock outside the US. So basically, Ryan, there isn't a single stock on the planet that's publicly traded that I don't own a small piece of. And they're not expensive. You can buy these things. Some of these shares are under $100, okay? You're getting a little tiny sliver. But what that does for you, it gets you so diversified that the only way I could lose all my money is if the entire planet crashed and every stock market in the whole planet was out of business. The chances of that happen are pretty darn slim. So I feel pretty safe. But you buy one share of one stock, like even a company as great as Apple or any other company, and something could happen and they could be out of business. Well, not when you own every stock on the planet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you bought when the stock market was going down, you bought in. And then when it raised up, that's how you were able to double.
Exactly. It's like I say, I wish it was down more. People are afraid when it goes down. No, I'm jumping for joy. My wife has thought it was so funny when we started this thing. She goes, "Hi," I said, "The market's down by whatever percentage. Isn't that great?" She goes, "Honey, we have money in the stock market. Aren't you worried?" I go, "No, that's what we want because we keep putting money in and we'll keep buying it cheaper and cheaper. I hope it never goes up for like 5 or 6 years if for lucky." It didn't stay down that long. But I mean, and the market never stays on real long. Here's the history of the market. 3/4 of the time the market is up, 1/4 of the time it's down. So 3 out of 4 years, you're going to be just fine. And that fourth year, you're actually is a very profitable year because if you're buying really low. So it's much safer than people make it out to be.
What's probably the biggest financial mistake people make?
Oh my God, this is a good one. And this is the one that so many people are making. People are paying tiny termite-sized fees that quietly inflict termite-like destruction on their portfolios. Let me explain what I mean by that. You got two people, A and person B, both same age. Say they're 25, starting out in life. They just got out of college or whatever. They're just starting their careers. And they both are investing the same amount of money, $1,000 a month for their whole career from 25 to 65, okay? Person A invests in a low-cost index fund with a 0.03% annual management fee. Person B goes to a financial advisor who charges the standard 1% fee, and they put him in an actively managed fund with a 5.75 upfront load and a 0.66% ongoing management fee, okay? So what happens after 40 years? Assuming the historical market returns, person A has a portfolio of $8.5 million. Person B has a portfolio of $4.2 million. Same market returns, same annual contributions. The only difference is the fees. And those fees created a $4.3 million difference. And here's the thing. We're assuming they never got a raise. If you factor in regular raises, Ryan, that difference would even be greater. And here's the sad part. Person B probably feels like he got excellent service because he really liked his advisor. Little did he realize that he did the equivalent of funding someone else's retirement with half of his own money. And I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm going to do it. I'm being transparent here. I never questioned fees during my 40 years of lost going in circles. I just assumed that was part of the rules of the game. I later found out the rules we don't question can cost us the most. In person B's case, it cost him $4.3 million. That is the biggest mistake people make. They don't question the fees.
Yeah. What's FIGNA and how does it differ from the FIRE movement?
Well, FIGNA is financial independence, graduate to the next adventure. The FIRE movement is more about stopping work. FIGNA is about graduating to something you love, something you really love. I personally never want to retire. I'm having too much fun. I love running my agency. Now that my son's joined me, it's even more fun. I absolutely love sharing my one-page compass with people and helping them on their path to financial freedom. And I enjoy my volunteer work I get to do every month. So I personally am not looking to retire. Now, I'm not against retirement. For some people, graduating to the next adventure might be retirement. But here's the point. When you're financially free, these choices become more opportunities than requirements. And so I guess everyone needs to find their own niche. For me, I started a company at 63. I wrote a book at 72. I can't wait to see what I'm going to do at 82, Ryan. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm excited. I'm not slowing down. I'm speeding up in a fun way, not in a stressful way at all.
So what does your day kind of consist of then?
Well, now that my book's only been out since last month, the 13th. So I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I've got about 30 in the pipeline and growing every day. So that's a slice of my day. I do visit clients once or twice a week. My son goes once or twice a week without me. Then we go together sometimes. So it's just a mixed thing, and office things I do, but I do stuff I enjoy. For me, this is not work talking to you, Ryan. This is fun, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah,
Podcast is play, So and visiting my clients, that's not work either. We live on a beautiful golf course. I mean, a beautiful golf course. I look at those golfers. I say, I'm happy for you guys and ladies, but I could never do that. It's just that's not me. I just love being productive. I love doing things. I can't just play golf. But I mean, I'm not criticizing it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned you just wrote a book. What inspired you to write it?
Well, here's the deal. I didn't start out to write the book. I really didn't. But what happened was I had already had my one-page compass. And I said to myself, if no more people knew about this compass and what they could do with their life financially, they would do it. Because look what it did for me in 6 years. I mean, say it took you 12 years. Say you didn't, whatever. Who cares? 12 years is not bad to be financially independent either, or 6 years or whatever it is. And I just felt an obligation. When somebody hands you a lifeline in a storm and you get to safety, I think the most selfish thing to do is just keep it to yourself. And so I am not doing this to make money, Ryan. I'm not doing it to income. I'm set. I'm fine. I financially don't need to do it. But I just feel like an obligation to share it with people, because if they knew how easy this was, it's not complicated. It really isn't. They could do it. So what I did is I went back and I said, okay, I got this compass, but I got to explain it to people in an interesting way. So I collected stories about myself, about other people I've witnessed. Some people succeeded, some people failed, and I put them in there. So every point of the compass, when I'm explaining a little concept, I give you a story behind it. And I promise you, they're interesting stories, they're real life stories, and people, so people don't have to make the same mistakes, and how they can see a clearer path. And it just kind of came together for me. And it took me about a year to do it, but it was kind of more of a passion project, like I say. And the results I've been getting on Amazon, I can't believe the feedback I'm getting, the reviews I'm getting. People are getting it. This is not another boring textbook about personal finance. This is interesting. It's stories, and it's simple. That's the key. It's simple. You can apply it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to have a PhD. I give stories of janitors and custodians and carpenters who are making more money and retiring wealthier than doctors and even some sports figures. And so it's just crazy. If you know how to do it, it's not risky. It's actually quite safe, much safer than normal.
Huh, nice. What was probably your biggest challenge when you were writing it?
The biggest challenge was getting in things that people would be simple for people to understand. I want to make sure, I figured it out by reading 20 some books, but I didn't want to make people to read 20 some books. I want to keep it simple. Let me give you an example that kind of shows the power of what we're talking about. NBA players. Yeah, I'm sure you may know this. The average NBA player makes over $10 million a year. That's not $10 million in his career, Ryan. That's $10 million in a single year. And yet, after 5 years of retirement, 60% of these people, they are broke, according to the Netflix documentary Broke. And the NFL is even worse. The NFL, after 2 years of retirement, 78% of them are either bankrupt or in serious financial stress. And that's according to Sports Illustrated. Now, compare that to Dale Schroeder, a basketball-loving carpenter who earned a modest income his entire life, but lived below his means and invested the difference. He ended up with $3 million. That is more than most NBA and NFL players end up with And his guy is a carpenter, and he made a very modest income his whole life. This is what I'm saying. People think, oh, you got to be rich to make money. You know, rich get richer. No, you don't have to be rich. You just have to follow the correct principles and some simple steps is what it is.
So what separates the guy who stay wealthy from the people who lose it all?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I have some friends. We used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona. We live in Phoenix now, but I used to have some friends, and they were very wealthy people. They had their own wholesale business. They were very generous people too. They were very kind people. They were very good people. I was honored to call them my friends. But when the recession hit in 2008, it destroyed their very successful business in a matter of months. But Ryan, they didn't just lose their business. They lost their beautiful Scottsdale home. They lost their amazing vacation estate, and they lost their investment properties. They lost it in a matter of months, we're talking about. And it was just, I mean, these people, they had decades of success, and now they're going into their senior years with almost nothing financially. But then Connor and Carol are some other people I knew. They didn't actually live very far. They lived maybe about a mile away from these other people. They didn't know each other. They had also a successful business. They lived a very comfortable lifestyle in Scottsdale too. Yet when the recession hit them, it did destroy their business, just like the other couple, the first couple. It destroyed their business. But here's the difference. They kept their beautiful Scottsdale home. They kept their amazing fleet of luxury cars they had, their own private little. They also kept their incredible lifestyle. What was the difference? It wasn't IQ. It wasn't ethics. It wasn't whatever you want to, academic achievement. It was strictly the second couple followed correct financial principles in every major financial decision they made. The first couple, they were unfortunately more like me when it came to finances. They just lived by principles they thought were true, but they were just very on shaky ground, and it destroyed their whole deal. And so it's really sad because two people, same income, same recession. One was devastated financially. The other one was completely protected. That's another reason I built a compass for me is I can't afford to start over anymore. This is it. I mean, this is my last shot, and I got to make it work.
Well, at 63, and started over.
Yeah.
So what do you think is probably the number one principle that everybody gets wrong? The financial principle that we all think's right, but it's wrong.
Well, this is one that is kind of interesting. It's about emergency funds. You've probably heard people say, a lot of financial experts tell us, get 3 to 6 months of money, put it in like a bank or a savings account for emergency, reasons. Okay, and I did that for years. So I'm not against that at all. I think it's a good idea in terms of having an emergency fund. But here's the thing about that is, what you do is if you put that money in, and say you put it, say it's $25,000, say it's a 3-month emergency fund for yourself, okay, or whatever it is, and you put it in a bank or CD earning 3.5%. That money, if you do that from 25 to 65, that money will be worth $99,000 when you're 65, which isn't bad, I guess. But when I made my compass, I questioned everything and I did the math. And what I found is if you took that same $25,000 and you put it in a index fund, a low-cost, highly diversified index fund, at the end, when you're 65, you'll have over $2 million in that emergency protection fund. And that's a huge difference in my book. Okay. Yeah. Anyways. And here's the thing about it is the traditional emergency fund, time works against you because of low returns and inflation. But with what I call my protection fund, time works actually to your advantage. Now, some people are going to say, Ryan, oh, David, you can't do that. That's crazy. You can't put money in the stock market for an emergency. What happens if the market crashes right when you have the emergency? Well, like we talked about earlier, Ryan, 3 out of 4 years, the market is up. It's only 1 out of 4, and so most of the time you're going to be safe. And then there's that rule of 72 I was telling you about. Guess what? In 7.2 years, that 25,000 will then be 50,000. So if the market crashes in half, you still got 25 like everybody else had in their funds. But the next 7.5 years, you now have 100,000. The next 7 years, you now have 200,000. And so how it builds and builds and builds, and it keeps doubling over time. And all of a sudden, you tell me who's safer, the person with $99,000 in his bank account earning 3% at 65, or the person with over $2 million, okay, in their account. to me, it's a no-brainer. I'd much rather be the person with $2 million because I think they're a lot safer. And here's what's really bad, okay, is people look only at the worst case scenario. But sometimes looking only at the worst case scenario can cause more harm than the worst case itself. And let me tell you why I say that, okay? If that person, most people in our lifetime, most average person will never have a $1 or $2 million emergency in their life. Never. That's just not, the average person doesn't have that kind of emergency. And yet, with a traditional emergency fund, you're guaranteed to pay for a $1 or $2 million emergency quietly and slowly over the years, going to your age 65. And so I think that's I just think that people need to rethink the emergency fund and have one, but think of where the money actually should be.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Never kind of really thought about it like that too.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway you want your readers to get from your book?
Well, it's not hard. It's not complicated. All the financial people out there, all the people selling products, they want you to think, oh, this is very complicated. You need me. I'm a Wall Street expert. I can, all this kind. No, you don't need them. Matter of fact, if you use them most of the time, they're going to be taking a big slice of your investment pie and keeping it for themselves. Those are the people that drive around in the luxury cars, live in the best neighborhoods, member of the country club, all that kind of. How do you think they're paying for that? Fees they're charging you. So I think it's not nearly as complicated as people pretend it is, who are trying to get your money. When I watch the news, sometimes I watch the financial news just for entertainment purposes. I never listen to it I would never do anything they recommend. But anyways, I listen to them, and they have these forecasters, and they're trying to tell you what the market's going to be, and they have no clue. It's a 50-50 chance no matter what the person's saying. I love what Warren Buffett says. Warren Buffett says, when forecasts, they tell you a lot about the forecaster, but they tell you nothing about the market. And that's so true. So I just laugh at them. I just think they're entertaining. But please, these experts, these so-called experts, they're making it complicated because they want you to think it's complicated, so you'll spend your money with them and they can get a nice chunk of your change or money.
Yeah, you might as well go watch the Weather Channel if you want to.
That's probably more productive.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, it's real simple. I have a website. It's called onepagewealthcompass.com. And what I'd like to do, Ryan, if it's okay with you, I'd like to offer your listeners a free gift, no strings, not costs. If you'll go to my website, onepagewealthcompass.com, as soon as you get on there, there's a page to get a free download of the actual one-page PDF compass I used when I was 63 to get to 69 financial independence. And Ryan, I still use it today. It's the exact same one-page wealth compass I use today. It's on a PDF. And they can get it for absolutely free when they join my newsletter, which is also free. And they'll get little tips too after that to help them along. And I'm going to give you the secret sauce for free. I'm not here to make money. I'm just here to, in fact, you go on my site, there's a ton of free stuff. You really can't buy anything except there's a link to Amazon for my book. If you like the book, that's great. I'm happy to have you get it. But it's really, everything is free and the compass is free. If you just do the compass and you see how simple this is and how it's not complicated at all, you can do this. And I'd love every one of your listeners to get it for free and just get on, see if they can want to just get on their own path to financial freedom.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes too for everyone. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
The only thing I would say is that, have you ever, your listeners ever heard of a moral compass, and that I'm sure they have, everyone's heard of it, but it's about, staying out of trouble, doing what's right, protecting yourself and your family, not going crazy about things. Well, I just feel like that's a good thing, but I know a lot of people with really strong moral compasses, very spiritual people, and they're suffering financially. They really are. Because why? They don't use that same concept with their money and have a wealth compass, And I also know people who have a lot of money and good moral compass, but their health is really suffering. So I just think this whole idea of having a one-page compass in the important areas of your life is so critical. And when you look at my one-page wealth compass, you can use that as a model. If there's another important area of your life you want to have a compass in it and make some real good progress into. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, great advice. All right, final question. Okay. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
I would say the one piece of advice about overcoming adversity is have a plan and stick to it. It's just, don't chase the shiny objects. Don't get distracted by people trying to pull you in some direction because they have ulterior motives to do that. Just get a plan and stick to it. It may take a while to develop the plan, but it's worth the investment of your time, because I found this, okay, clear direction beats misdirected speed every time. And what that upfront research or that compass does for you, it gets you that clear direction, because you can go off, and for 40 years, I had misdirected speed. I was running fast, but I was going nowhere. And so that would be my piece of advice I'd like to leave.
That's so true too. It's a great analogy too when you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
David, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your great story and great insight.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It has been a pure pleasure to be on this program with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is to go through the fire.